Welcome back, Myrmidons, to Greek mythology and the Homeric Chronicles. The first 3 episodes were dedicated to establishing the narrative timeline, and the next several episodes are grouped together as the Wonder Women of Greek mythology. There are so many complex women in myth, I'd like to begin with Clytemnestra. She's one of the strongest mortal females in the Trojan War narrative. Although she's a classic tragic heroine, her fatal flaw is one any mother, and I'll bet any father as well, can personally relate to. Her mythological story arc is a long and painful one, punctuated by brief moments of joy when she finds renewed love and the birth of her last child. Also, her inability to grasp how her focus on avenging her daughter's death literally stole the joy of the life in front of her is a uniquely human and relatable experience. Who hasn't struggled with balancing the past, present, and the future? As a woman writer of Greek mythology, I find her one of the most intriguing characters to research and develop. She's probably one of my favorites, if not the favorite. In my episodes 1 through 3, I debunked the 4-egg simultaneous hatching of Clytemnestra, Helen, Castor, and Pollux for a variety of reasons. Mostly narrative structures that make sense for humans and how these characters in particular relate to other, stronger storylines of other major characters. It's a lot to balance for sure, but it's not impossible. In the Homeric Chronicles, Clytemnestra is the elder sister of Helen by a generation. She's an established widow and a twice married woman by the time Helen's born. I'll cover all the details of Helen's conception and birth in a later episode of this Wonder Women of Greek Myth section called Two Wronged Queens. After Clytemnestra is born, she's the first princess of Sparta. No doubt Queen Leda had affection for her daughter, but she was already emotionally scarred by Zeus because of her first rape by the god. So it makes sense that Leda would be one of 2 ways with Clytemnestra: distant and self-protective, or suffocating and overprotective, both natural reactions to her trauma of being abused by Zeus. What I had to do in the Homeric Chronicles was make a choice for the narrative and how that would shape Clytemnestra's relationship with her mother and Clytemnestra's development as a woman. Knowing what trials Clytemnestra endures, I chose the colder, distant Leda, who would then foreshadow what her eldest daughter, Clytemnestra, would become. To fully understand Clytemnestra, we have to understand the odds she's up against. First of all, she and Helen are doubly cursed. The first curse comes from within Clytemnestra's own family. Hesiod informs us in fragment 67 of the Catalogue of Women that Tyndareus, Clytemnestra and Helen's father, offended Aphrodite because, quote, while sacrificing to the gods, Tyndareus forgot Aphrodite, making the goddess angry, and so made his daughters twice and thrice wed and deserters of their husbands. And Hesiod also says, and laughter-loving Aphrodite felt jealous when he looked on them and cast them into evil rapport. And even so, Clytemnestra deserted godlike Agamemnon and lay with Agathis, and chose a worse mate. And even so, Helen dishonored the couch of golden-haired Menelaus. What are the implications of Aphrodite's curse for Clytemnestra and Helen? Basically, they're doomed to be unvirtuous women. It's the ancient world's version of slut-shaming the sisters for something their father did wrong. Maybe it's because of the first curse that they were destined to be married into the bad luck club of House Atreus, adding the second layer of misfortune. A string of heinous actions, including patricide, infanticide, cannibalism, incest, and adultery, can be traced back to Agamemnon and Menelaus' grandfather, Tantalus I. Tantalus I was a crazy sociopath who boiled up his son for dinner and served him to the gods. This was an unforgivable act, resulting in him being sent to Tartarus, the dark hole of Never Neverland, forever. And the bad luck trickled down through the bloodline of House Atreus to Agamemnon and Menelaus. So what happened to Clytemnestra happens because of the sins of the men who had societal control of her life. Not unusual in a patriarchal society. As a woman, Clytemnestra didn't receive any more privileges than we'd expect women of her status to have in the ancient world. She'd been given to her first husband, Tantalus II, when she was a virgin, so it's likely that she was a bride at, say, 16 or 17. She became a princess of Mycenae by her marriage to Tantalus II, because his father, Theseus, was king of Mycenae after having deposed his brother Atreus. Okay, now I have to diverge a bit because of all of these Tantaluses in mythology. Tantalus II and Tantalus III are kind of murky. According to Apollodorus and Pausanias, Tantalus II was a prince of Pisa or the son of Theseus, and Tantalus III was definitely the son of Theseus. I made a decision in the Homeric Chronicles to merge any confusion about Tantalus II and III into a single character, and I went with that the whole way through. For this podcast and the Homeric Chronicles series, he's called Tantalus II. The most shocking part of Tantalus's story is being served up as dinner for his father, Theseus, by his uncle Atreus. And this is in line with the curse of House Atreus. And I incorporated that into the merged characters arc. All right, now back on track. So after Clytemnestra marries Tantalus II, they have a child. And not long after that, Agamemnon, in cahoots with Tyndareus, Clytemnestra's father, attacks Mycenae, brutally killing Clytemnestra's husband and child. This level of trauma scars Clytemnestra's psyche, planting the seeds of future bloodshed and vengeance. And when her father forces her to marry Agamemnon, who just made her a widow before a bride, those seeds get pushed deeper into fertile soil. In the Homeric Chronicles, you'll see her develop an inner strength born of hate and grief. She becomes the cold and distant mother Leda was, much for the same reason, being traumatized by the men in their lives. I wanted to dig into what those experiences would have done to a woman, a mother, and a wife. That kind of pain makes it natural to distance yourself as a protection against more hurt, even if it means pushing away emotions and people you love. Because, well, if something should happen to your loved ones, you'd experience more pain. It's a vicious cycle. Clytemnestra's marriage to Agamemnon cements the Queen of Mycenae's complicated foundation. In the Homeric Chronicles, there's a pivotal scene between Leda and Clytemnestra on how to take power from the patriarchy. You would have me continue as if he's done nothing? Even Theseus received greater mercy than I'm expected to endure. Agamemnon killed my husband, my son, your grandson. Does this mean nothing to you? Leda took her daughter roughly by the shoulders, shaking her words into the young woman between clenched teeth. You stupid girl, have you not learned already? Do you think men the only creatures who go to war, the only ones who gird themselves in armor? You think there is more bravery in hacking a man in two than the plight of women who pass by in horror, slipping on the blood and shit of strangers to find their men, bring them home, stitch their gaping holes, praying to the gods for their healing, all the while knowing death drags them to the underworld? Every step you take, every word you utter is a strategy in a war for control of your world. Agamemnon has won the first battle. Tears slid down her daughter's cheek, and Leda gentled her tone. Gird yourself, my darling, with your words, your plans. Do not let him win the war. The princess wiped the tears from her eyes and stiffened her jaw. I will rule my world. Now you sound like the true Spartan princess. Women simply didn't have the freedom to choose their own path. Who they were and what they did was defined for them by the men in their lives, first their fathers and then their husbands. Clytemnestra has no choice but to marry the man her father tells her she must, even if he'd murdered her first husband. Her life had value only because it legitimized Agamemnon's claim to the Mycenaean throne. After the marriage, years of calm followed, as did the birth of two more children, Orestes and Electra. Peace held in Mycenae until the day a Trojan prince, absconded with Clytemnestra's younger sister, Helen of Sparta. It was an affront the boys of House Atreus couldn't ignore. They organized an expedition against Troy. Up to the call of the Second Trojan War, life was fairly calm for Clytemnestra as she worked within her position as Queen of Mycenae and the mother of 3 royal heirs to gain control of her world. She balances her buried grief for the deaths of Tantalus II and her child with the life imposed on her by her father. She uses her feminine wiles to keep Agamemnon and the household loyal to her. But as Sigmund Freud said, unexpressed emotions will never die. They're buried alive and will come forth in uglier ways. This couldn't be more true for Clytemnestra. It wasn't just because of Iphigenia that she wanted to kill Agamemnon. It was really for all of it. For her late husband, for her child, for Iphigenia, for being married to him in the first place. She probably thought about putting a knife to her father's throat more than once because of that. Her desire for vengeance, and perhaps righteously so, is practically a lifelong development. Agamemnon murders their daughter Iphigenia at Aulis to get the winds to blow the fleet across the Aegean to Troy. This is the second child murdered by the same man, and you can't help but wonder how that raked up Clytemnestra's past grief. She mourns Iphigenia alone back in Mycenae, where the coldness of her personality grows colder. This is her fatal flaw as a tragic heroine. She has 2 children, Electra and Orestes, both by Agamemnon, who she pushes away because she feels the need for vengeance, calling louder to her than her heart's need for love. Perhaps she feels that she doesn't deserve love in any form, another very human aspect of her storyline. Who hasn't struggled with their sense of self-worthiness in the realm of love? In the Homeric Chronicles, I write about her complex relationship with Agathis, passionate and cold, in keeping with her character. This is a passage from Rise of Princes. They fell together, sweaty and tangled in the linens. Agathis kissed Clytemnestra's swollen lips. No words passed between them. He had come to conquer her, and again he'd lost. "Your heart is iron. My heart is ashes," she whispered. Agathis reached for her hand. She always allowed this simple touch, but rebuffed his embrace and loving gestures. There was nothing else to say. He accepted his lover as she was, broken, aching, cold. It wasn't love that bound them, but their need for vengeance and a black hatred for a common enemy. He loved the queen in his own way, and he knew tender, sweet words would never find a welcome landing in her breast. In the end, she gets the satisfaction of revenge, realizing too late the cost of that desire, the loss of her children's love. Clytemnestra is all at once a tragic figure of a mother's love gone wrong, a wife's loyalty broken, and a lover's inability to truly commit. The curse of House Atreus consumed Clytemnestra along with the rest of Tantalus I's bloodline. Well, that's it for the Clytemnestra in the Wonder Woman of Greek Mythology series. If you want to find out more about Clytemnestra, pick up the Homeric Chronicles, Book 1, Song of Princes, and Book 2, Rise of Princes, both available at Amazon. Book 3 is coming out later this year, and I'm still working on a title. For now, what do you think about this characterization of Clytemnestra? What thoughts do you have about her so far? Do you see her as a villain or as a sympathetic character? I'd love to hear your thoughts, answer questions, and connect with my fellow Greek mythology lovers. The podcasts are available on Spreaker, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Tumblr. Please give me a like and a follow on your favorite podcasting platform. You can visit my webpage, JanelleRhiannon.com, Twitter @TheRavenAngel, IG account Janelle_Rhiannon, Facebook @Janelle Rhiannon author page. Well, that's it until next time. Drink your wine and be merry, Myrmidons.